Welcome everybody to Before The Valley, the podcast where we discern and test the self-development methods of all these successful business heroes of our time, such as Warren Buffett and Elon Musk. But on the other hand, we discuss interesting business ideas and concepts from the point of view of two inexperienced, yet hopeful entrepreneurs. Today's episode is going to be an experimental one because it's going to be shorter than the regular ones. Hopefully, however, it's going to be as valuable as them. The podcast is going to be based on something that I read from The Effective Executive, a book which I recommended in the previous episode. And a book which I still recommend because after reading 60 pages from it, it's already clear to me how useful it can be, as today's episode, as I told you, is going to be based on it. I was reading the book and I came across something very interesting when it comes to time management. And I've prepared it for you. Here is how it goes. To be effective, every knowledge worker, which is basically people that produce concepts and ideas rather than actual products, and especially every executive needs to be able to dispose of time in fairly large chunks. To have small dips and dabs of time at his disposal or her disposal will not be sufficient even if the total number of hours is impressive. And this made me think whether I'm effective or not, whether I'm having those large chunks of time at my disposal when it comes to dealing with important tasks. And initially I thought that I'm not, but the book is saying that in order to confirm or validate what you think, you need to record yourself and how you spend your time. And it's discussing from the point of view of executives and how their secretaries can do this. But in our case, we can do it very simply. We can just use our phone and start recording how much time we spent on each activity that we do during 1-2 days. And afterwards, we have enough data in order to judge whether we're effective or not. And I did that. After doing so, I realized that I'm spending far more time than usually on stuff that I was doing before. And on the other hand, I'm getting easily distracted by social media. And after getting distracted, I'm spending quite a lot of time using my Instagram, Telegram, or going on YouTube, as this instant gratification feeling is emerging when I'm doing something important. So, after knowing that you're having an issue, or it's not anything major because effectiveness can be learned, as the author is discussing, but you can take some steps in order to improve that. If you say that, okay, you're getting distracted by social media because currently amidst the lockdown, you need more social interactions and you need to communicate with other people because you're home alone, which is what I am. That's a valid point, that's a solid point. But the author is saying that what you can do in this case is that you can block certain amount of time, like have those time boxes during the day for certain activities. If you have important things that you need to do, you block 2 to 3 hours and you focus only on that thing, because afterwards you have a lot of time in order to interact with people, to be socially active, and you can even block time during the day for doing so. So to illustrate, let's say that I have a task and I'm gonna do it in the morning. I block 2 hours for it, and afterwards, after finishing it, meanwhile, no distractions, I'm only doing that thing, I can reach out to my family, to my friends, and so on. Okay, that's a good thing, but that's a thing that's, by the way, I came to a conclusion to after discussing it with the other co-host of the show, Peter. However, an interesting point is that you might do this consciously, like this distinction between when you need to spend your time for different activities, but you would still have these distractions, right? Your phone would be there, you would be getting sometimes notifications. On your laptop, you might have some applications about related social media, which are going to distract you meanwhile. And by accident, I realized something very useful, which some of you might say, oh yeah, we all knew this, but I didn't. So basically, after 10 p.m., my phone was turning automatically to do not disturb mode, which meant that this was the point of time when I stopped getting any notifications, and I was aware that my phone is not going to distract me. Therefore, after 10 p.m., this was also something that I validated with the data from recording my time, I was becoming much more productive and efficient because I was able to focus on what I have to do, knowing it from the journal, because I was still keeping that journaling and what I need to do during the day. But after 10 p.m., there was one distraction less. My phone was not distracting me anymore, and I was able to focus on my tasks. So therefore, I implemented it during a longer period of time during the day, and I saw that I'm consciously not thinking about anything else apart from what I have to do. And after finishing what I have to do, as I know that my phone is not going to distract me, I open it and I check it and I see that, okay, I had some messages, but nothing major, nothing urgent. I can respond to them, and I still get my social interaction and contact with friends and family members. On the other hand, this is point number 1 when it comes to how to deal with all these distractions. Point number 2, or the next points, are coming from Matt D'Avella's newsletter. Matt D'Avella is a very famous YouTuber. I'm pretty sure most of you know him. He has almost 3 million subscribers. So he's giving some advice in terms of how to be more effective during this time of lockdown, when our workspace has changed. We're no longer going outside interacting with people, and we're getting much more distracted from all of these things that are in the house. So he's saying that first 2 points, you need to get a proper workspace where you know that you have to work, not in the living room where you're usually dining or that you're doing different activities. If you have a proper workspace, you're going to be able to focus in a better way. This is what he's saying based on his experience. Another thing is solitude, aka being alone, or that if that's not possible, you can use noise cancelling headphones, which is what I'm currently doing. Like, there is a lot of noise outside, which is distracting me constantly, and I'm having issues actually with such distractions. So putting the headphones on is helping me reduce that noise and hence being able to focus more. Third point is focus music. That's a very, very important thing, especially in my personal life. After 10 p.m. especially, I've been constantly putting focus music. This can be low sci-fi beats. This can be classical music. In my case, I do it with as less vocals as possible. And I like to put EDM music, which is not very dynamic, but it's more chilled, relaxed. Because if it's very dynamic, I'm getting my dopamine levels are spiking and I want to fulfill them somehow. I start to feel this sense of dancing and this need to do something actively. So therefore, putting some chilled classical music or whatever it is can also help you reduce any kind of distractions. Another point very important is coffee or triggers, as he likes to call them. In the morning, personally, when I wake up, I make my coffee. But that's not only because I want to drink coffee and I feel the need to drink coffee, otherwise I cannot start my day. It's kind of like a trigger. You make your coffee, you sit down on your desk, and you know, okay, that's work time. Before that, you can you can still do some work, but after making the coffee, you know that it's when things start to get real and you have to focus on your stuff because you have the coffee, and that's the trigger. It can be tea, it can be anything else. The point here is that such a drink plays the role of a trigger. And to the list of Matt D'Avella, I would add an advice from Peter, the other co-host of the show, which we discussed recently. It was that sometimes we get distracted because of dopamine issues. We want to fulfill this dopamine, and in order to do so, he said that he's putting some very active, dynamic music, which makes him want to dance and be active, which fulfills his dopamine, and after doing so, he doesn't feel any more such a high, big need to check his notifications and to fulfill the dopamine that he needs. So this is the advice which I've tried to start implementing, and it has worked for me. I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one who's facing lack of attention issues, or the fact that I'm getting distracted much easily than usually. So therefore, I think that all of this could be useful for you as well. And something which I want to finish this episode of the podcast with is related to a very famous talk from a very, very successful entrepreneur. This is what we're doing in this podcast. We're discussing the self-development methods of successful business people, entrepreneurs, in order to see how what they're doing, if we implement it, can help us, become more successful or to become better on a daily basis. So Tim Urban, who I'm gonna link in the video actually, as well as everything else that I mentioned previously, so that you can check it if you want to. But he did a TED Talk about procrastination. And he discussed procrastination from the perspective of tight deadlines that we meet on a daily basis from university or work, that we can procrastinate to a certain point of time before the deadline. And eventually we will start doing it. We'll start completing this deadline, whether that's 1 or 2 days before, it doesn't matter. We'll complete it because we are limited, like our procrastination is limited. However, in life, that's not the case. And the biggest limit that we have is the point where we die, right? But it's not something that we consider on a daily basis. However, when you see it from perspective, like taking a step back, what he did is that he represented each week that we have left. If the average life expectancy is 90 years, with a box. And these boxes are not that many. Therefore, it's better to start focusing on being efficient as soon as possible in order to avoid filling these boxes and realizing that you've wasted your time. And yes, of course, we have a quote for today, which is related to focus. And the quote is from Winston Churchill. It's a very good quote. Thank you once again, Peter, for providing it. And it goes like this. You will never reach your destination if you stop and throw stones at every dog that barks. And such a quote makes us realize that focus and distractions go in opposite directions. If we get distracted by every single dog, we will never reach our destination. And if you consider this, considering what Tim Urban said, with how many boxes we have left until we die, which is not pessimistic, it's just how life is, right? You have to realize that we have to be efficient, we have to be effective, which is what the effective executive is speaking about. And we have to start working on it today, on improving this skill, which, as the author is saying, is something that we can actually improve by practicing it more and more. So this was all for today. Thank you very much for tuning in once again. Please leave a feedback on this video, and because it's, as I said, an experimental podcast, a much shorter one, but hopefully as valuable as the previous ones. Thank you very much, and see you next time.